fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and of course, you know, we've got Joe Goldberg here, so we're going to be talking about violence.
Violence, death, crazy things. You know,
yeah.
The way my brain works.
We can just, you know, Joe Crazy. That's what you should call you. Should be your writing name, Joe Crazy.
My alter ego. Joe Crazy, hanging by the water cooler.
There you go. See, simple. Well, today we're going into the dark, Western, horror, fantasy. We're doing it all. And who else could we do it better with? We're going to talk about Hip Deep in Bad Company. Anne Charles. So thank you for being here, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here today.
So what's going on in Anne's world? It's been a few years, or it's been about a year anyway since you were here, probably.
Oh, it's been a doozy of a year. I am of the age now where my parents are having trouble and my teenagers are having trouble. So those beautiful sandwich years where it's more like, I think they should call it the vice years, where you're, you know, pinched between the two and just... So I almost lost my father last year, and I did lose my mom this year. So it's been a double whammy, and trying to write, you know, dark humor in the midst of all that has been a little bit of a challenge, but we kept going and getting back on track finally, I feel like.
Well, those are hard times, and that, you know, you should maybe change your name and color your hair and move somewhere.
I think call yourself Joe Crazy.
Yeah.
I think Anne Crazy, and I'm just going to put leaves throughout my hair and twigs and, you know, wear just a big long gown and start spouting weird things out loud in the grocery store just to, you know, keep people at a distance.
Yeah. Go out in the field and start singing, I like to teach the world to sing.
I don't know. I'm trying to get back to that happiness stage, you know, getting through the dark times and getting back to that twirling in the field and singing away.
Well, it never happens, just so you know.
Oh, come on. I've been aiming for that.
Well, I think it does. I think things just change, you know, things changes. You know, I lost both my parents, I know that. And I don't know, it's just, you become different, but you'll still write. When things like that happen around you, are you able to absorb that and put it into the dark parts of your book?
Well, I thought I'd be able to keep going. I mean, for years and years, I plowed through so many things in life, you know, events, good and bad, that happened, that I thought I could just keep on plowing. And turns out I hit a really big rock, and it just kind of stopped me for a bit. You know, there were days of getting out of bed seemed like work. And I know that's, you know, a sign of depression. I know, you know, enough from others that have suffered and talked about it. And I thought, wow, this is different. I haven't experienced this, you know, what am I getting up for, that whole thing. But, you know, time heals everything, and you just keep trying. And if you're like me and you have kids, you have to keep going, and you just keep, you know, pulling through and figure out, as you said, I feel different than who I was before. And I was worried before I got back into the writing groove that it had changed some part of who I was on the page. You know, I think there are some changes, but I don't think it's what I feared.
No, and you just have to keep going, right? Life,
right.
Keep moving forward, and life goes on. I mean, I know Joe, he's a cornholer, keeps missing his hole, so he goes through struggles.
You're hitting the middle of another joke. But let me, because I had both my parents die within months of each other, burnt my house down, my dog died, and a few other things with about 14 months. And I put that type of stuff, I put it in my books. And I saw my dad, I used this phrase, you now have older kids, right? Every time your kid gets older, it's a new year of experience, and now your mother has died tragic. How have you incorporated that at all once you're back in the writing swing?
Well, I think it seems like the emotions, I'm closer to them now. And, you know, that comes on the page. When I first started back on the page, you know, writing again, and my husband, Sam Lucky, he co-writes, you know, that series, the Deadwood Undertaker series with me. He's my first reader, and I had him go through the first, you know, 5 or so chapters that I'd written, and I said, what do you think? And he said, I think Violet, who's the character in the Deadwood series that I was writing, I said, he goes, I can see in her, some of the pain you're still dealing with the way she is. She's not quite what she was in the last book. So, but he said it in such a nice way that I said, okay, I can go back. I can think about this. I can, look at it differently now that you've said that. And I could. And then going back in and going, okay, let's find it again. Let's find that humor that is always there and putting that, letting that flow again. It's like something had blocked it for a little bit. But I do think, as I said, the emotions, it runs deeper now. Some way I can't really explain beyond that.
It means more.
Yes.
So what if someone had never read any of your books, which I don't see how that's possible, but if someone hasn't read one of these in the Deadwood series, maybe give a quick overview of what is that series about?
So the Deadwood Undertaker series, I'll start with that since we were talking about Hip Deep. This is the prequel series to my Deadwood Mystery series. And as in prequel as in back into the 1870s when Deadwood and Lead, South Dakota, there was gold in their hills. And the miners were coming and people were coming from all over the world because, the gold that had been discovered. And so Deadwood was kind of a wild and rowdy town. They would even be at times digging in the streets, for gold. Trying to stake a claim, trying to find those, lovely, big, bountiful veins of gold. So that's what the series kind of how it starts. And it starts back with Life at the Coffin Joint, with a heroine named, Clementine is her name that she goes by currently. And she's an undertaker. And that's kind of how this whole series got started, was the idea of a female undertaker back then. Because, I watched a lot of documentaries and shows about the West. And undertakers are often in it, but I don't often see females. So we started digging, my husband and I, into, were there female undertakers, and what would that life have been like? And then we threw in supernatural because the Deadwood Mystery series is a blend of supernatural. And took this female undertaker and made her, part human, but part something else. And she's there in Deadwood to find trouble, if you will, of the supernatural sort. So it kind of upped the ante. And then we threw in a couple of freighters that are good with guns, seemingly plain old humans, and some others that all into the mix to form this undertaker crew, we call them. And just having a wild and rowdy time in the Old West with supernatural things that make their jaw drops, or drop when they're coming across it because they're not accustomed to this.
If you ever need, references, you could always call Joe because he was around when the Deadwood started.
Right. Well, I was going to say she used the phrase "digging for an undertaker," so I just want to make sure I marked that in the show. But can I ask a question though? Because you said you watched a lot of Western documentaries. Is authenticity important in your Western paranormal series?
It is very important. And that plays along with the Deadwood Contemporary series, which is the mystery supernatural humor blend. I spent a lot of time growing up in that area. That's where my mom had lived for the last 35 years. And when I started all this way back in the mid-2000 era, I wanted it to be fiction, but I wanted the setting to have more authenticity to it because I wanted people to be able to come to Deadwood and see these, the places I talked about and the history bits I was including. And that would be the truth, according to what they have, found for history for that area, mixed with a layer of fiction on top of it to, add to the fun. And so when we started writing this 1870s, we wanted to really make sure we were, authentic with the time, what was going on in that area, the true history. And in addition to anyone who writes any kind of historical story, readers are so smart. You have to make sure you're using all the right firearms,
yes,
just wagons, type of building material used, everything. Everything has to be time-wise correct, or you will get called on it. There's a lot of smart readers out there.
The Western aficionados will say that is not how you cinch up the saddle. And,
right.
They will come and get you.
Right.
I get that espionage fiction. That's not how it's not called that. It's what? What? Yeah. Leave me alone. But it's not nonfiction. It's not a documentary. It's an entertainment.
Right.
Are you entertainment? Is that how you define yourself? Entertainment?
Yes, I would very much say that. From the start, my goal has been to entertain, to give escape, someone an escape away from whatever, good or bad in their life, and just go somewhere else for a while and be entertained, but also to learn little tidbits of, like I said, history and truth mixed in. I have a lot of fun including that into all the different books I write.
No, and how do you include the humor? Like, you've got humor in it. I mean, I guess for me, how would you choose where and when to use it, or how much of it to use in a story like this?
I've had lots of stuff happen in my life throughout, from parents divorcing when I was really young and it not being a pretty one, all the way up through different, I'm not going to bore you guys with that. But what I did learn is that I handle stress, grief, fear with humor. It helps me to face, these darker emotions and handle them and get through them. And so when I started out to write the Deadwood contemporary series, which is dark humor, I had someone say, let me get this straight. You're going to have humor, and yet there's young girls missing, and you're blending humor with that. And I said, yes, because I think a lot of people lean on humor in order to handle, what life throws at them. And it's not like we're laughing at, the fact that, like, the girls were missing. It wasn't that. That was terrifying. But finding ways throughout the story to incorporate humor, whether it's through dialogue with somebody that's kind of funny offbeat, whether it's, this is just an exaggeration, but tripping over your own feet on the sidewalk and, landing on your phone and breaking it or something like that. Just ways of incorporating how real life seems to, hit us with that kind of stuff. But instead of looking at it as, oh man, I fell and I skinned my knees, more, oh man, look what I did. And you kind of laugh at yourself and you find humor in it. And then you pick yourself back up and keep going. And that's kind of the basis. A lot of the humor is more, in the Deadwood series, Violet Parker, handling all this stuff that's coming at her in a way that you can laugh along with her. Even when she's struggling. Sort
of like a Gallus humor. I agree. I do the same thing. Sometimes people don't always take it that way.
Right.
That's why I was saying, how you decide to use the humor, because sometimes people get really out of joint if they think I'm being a wise ass, so to speak, or something. And it's really about me.
Right.
And me dealing with whatever's going on, and I'm not thinking as much about the people around me, which is probably a mistake.
I sat in a humor class years and years ago at a writing conference, and the author, one I really admired and still do, she said, humor often works best on the page if you aim it back at the character themselves rather than poking fun at others, turn it toward, herself, or since that's a first person story, it would be back at me or Violet, the writer, and the character, and make it about her. And that tends to be a humor that spreads further. It's not, we're not making fun of people, we're making fun of her reactions to stuff, or, so a lot of the times the humor is based on that. I often make fun of myself, in public or not, because I'm always doing, not always, I would like to think, but often doing things that it's like, oh, what was I thinking, when I did that. So using that kind of humor mixed in.
Right. Yeah. Well, I enjoy making fun of myself. Saves other people from doing it. Like so behind my back anyway.
So how do you come up with these different characters? I mean, you got a lot of books, a lot of different times, a lot of different plot lines, I guess. How do you come up with these?
She's a drug addict.
She's going back to the 60s, like if you still will sing, right?
Yep, exactly. I know I have a wonderful woman who helps me. She keeps track of plot lines in that. And she once told me, she does that for me as well as other authors. And she once said, this was like 5 years ago, she said, do you realize you have over 500 characters so far in all your different books? And she has a list of it for me. Wow. And I said, oh, wow, I didn't know. Now, I don't name all those. You only get a name, really, if you're going to have some part in the story for the most, part, unless we're having fun with you. But I don't know. I think Alan's right. Maybe there was some drug use at one point that I don't remember. But they just come, and a lot of times they're based off, you guys sit in airports or wherever and watch people go by. Las Vegas is so fun to watch people go by, and you just build characters off what you see, what you imagine.
You shop at Walmart a lot. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I'm partly one of those sometimes when I go, partly in my pajama bottoms or something.
You're that. Oh, now we know.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
Well, that's all right. I hang out in the airports even when I don't have flights.
Don't say that. Edit that out. Timestamp that.
Yeah. Well, But so all of these characters you've got going on, do you experience them all the same? Do they all seem the same to you? Do you hear them, see them, and all that? Are all equal, or some more important and you get more of a interaction than others?
I think the odd balls of the groups get my attention more, and I have fun with them. But, just as if you were to go to a family reunion, and I'm not dissing on anyone's family here, but, you may have 4 second cousins show up, and as you're sitting there watching them, they seemed all the same when you saw who all was coming. Yeah, that's so-and-so's kids. But when they get there, you really start noticing how different they are, their unique traits, their tics, all that kind of thing. And that's kind of how characters are for me. They're people, and nobody's, the same as the other person next to him. Everybody is unique. And one of the things I love to do when I meet strangers on a plane, just ask about them, turn it, so let's not talk about me, let's talk about you type of thing. And then I get these whole crazy stories a lot of times. And I think, wow, I never would have guessed when I looked at you in your beige clothing that underneath that was this wild, story-filled ride we were just going to go on. So, when I think of characters, it's the same. When I start to develop them, I start watching for tics and traits and little things and stories from their past, because, we all have really good stories from our past, at least if you're over 10. And a 7-year-old today told me that he has a lot of stories to tell me. So,
oh boy, he's
There you
lived.
go. Well, maybe it's not a bad idea. Fresh perspective from a 7-year-old. Are there types of characters you don't want to include? You purposely say, you know what, I'm not going to include that kind of person. I cancel myself, maybe for lack of a better phrase.
I don't know, not really. I have some real jerks. And I once told
Somebody, did you call me? Hello? Sounds like me.
I once told a reader, there's a little bit of me in every character. And she said, even, Ray, who's a real jerk in the Deadwood Contemporary series, even him. And I said, yeah, I guess so. Even him. I mean, but I think you need that offset. Nobody's life is really that perfect, is it? I mean, everybody on Facebook likes to show their perfect happy family, but let's get real. Everybody has some trials. Although I did have one friend, and I love her dearly, and it seemed like her family was the Beaver Cleaver family, and I would tell her about mine, and she would just be aghast at, oh, that really happens within your family? And I'm like, what's wrong with your family? Why are you guys so normal in like a TV show? That seems odd.
Yeah.
So,
Ouch.
So, I think that I like to include what some might feel is a negative personality or not the best characters, because I think that's more true to life. And I have had readers told me, boy, I can't stand that guy. He's such a jerk. He's, this, and this. I can't believe what he says or does to the main character would ever be true. And I say, well, apparently you must be like under 30, because I've experienced some of this, at the workplace. So I know people aren't all perfect, again, like they show on TV series.
Well, I thought everybody was Leave It to Beaver.
Wow. What was the cousin? What was Wally's buddy?
Lumpy?
Lumpy,
Eddie
yeah.
Haskell.
Wasn't he a little bit of trouble there? I think more stuff is like Lumpy's World.
Eddie Haskell was the...
That's it.
I'm not old enough to remember.
Yes, I think I'm 2 or 3 years older than you. So, yes.
Yeah, well, that was an important 2 years.
Okay.
So any reason you chose an Undertaker as the career of your main character?
Well, they're supernatural. And one of the reasons that Clementine has come to town, has been called to town, or hired actually to come to town, is to figure out some of the not so good things happening around town. And one of the best ways to figure out crimes and such that's going on is to examine dead bodies. So what a perfect career, if you're going to figure out mysteries, then Undertaker is right there with, the deaths and the strange things that are happening and trying to figure that out. If you think back to, wasn't that the basis of, Quincy?
Yeah.
Am I showing my age here?
No, I watched those reruns daily.
Yeah, and it's you can tell a lot from and there's a really good horror movie that's more recent. Jane Doe, is it, or something like that, where it's all about the autopsy of this woman. And the further they get into the autopsy, the more supernatural, scary, mystery, all that intensifies till you're like, please stop doing the autopsy. Things are coming out of dark corners now. You've got to stop or we're going to die here with you, So it's a really good show that kind of brings out that, autopsy and how it can play along with the mystery and figuring out a mystery.
Do you get real scientific with it then? Do you get into that? Or I guess they weren't really that scientific back then with the autopsies or undertaking and all that, right? Just wrap them and strap them.
So my husband is a research guru, and he loves this stuff, and he loves to read old newspapers from back then and emulate the wording, in the story when a newspaper, they're reading an article from the local paper, anything like that. And he also has a great time with some of the autopsies, the description and those scenes, not going necessarily into the bloody gore, but more just the words and the descriptions and the tools they would use and all that. And he has way too much fun, I think, sometimes on the page with that.
Well, that is a really fun thing. I've done that a lot with the crime that I've done. I love the old newspapers. I go through them all the time, and I'll go page to page. There's so much stuff you pick up in there.
Right.
The way people talk, the way they write about each other or behave, what they think is funny, from
right.
It's kind of cool. I find it it's energizing for me when I'm writing. I like the older stuff. So, that's why Joe's here.
That's right. Yeah, thanks a lot. 3 years older. Let's get a killer question in. You have a series with the character. Did you know how the characters have changed from book to book, or is that just not important? Each book stand alone, and this is the way it is.
So these my books are not like an Agatha Christie where you could we finish up the mystery and then we start new and it's a whole new thing, and what happened in the last show had really not much to do with the new show, and or any of those kind of style shows. This is more of a long running series. What we do try to include, though, is enough tidbits of backstory so that if you were to, hop in on book 4, you would learn enough about what happened and if it relates to the current plot line that we're working on. They do that a lot with when you watch a series now. They'll spend like 30 seconds or so on a recap, but they'll only show you from previous. It might have been 4 or 5 shows ago. They'll show you a plot line from that, and then we're going to be talking about that again. So. Think along those lines. It's kind of like I'm not going to go through the whole, last 4 books in short form, but I am going to tell you the plot and give you just a little bit of a catch up to where we are. So if you're coming in new, you can follow along.
How do you tackle supernatural? Like what kind of angles do you take with that? What do you include in the books or the series?
So for me, supernatural, I grew up it was scary. Supernatural was not sparkly vampires and all that fun stuff. It wasn't the monsters and the creatures I grew up were humanoids from the deep. And that terrified me for many reasons. Really weird stuff from the 70s and then of course 60s and 50s and then early 80s, The Thing, with Kurt Russell, that particular one. I love that kind of stuff. I've always enjoyed, having a little bit of a scare. So when I started writing the Deadwood Mystery Series way back, about 2007, I knew I wanted to have monsters, creatures, supernatural beings that were not warm and fuzzy, that this stuff was going to, be really creepy. A lot of times. But then we'd also have a mix of some that seemed creepy, but maybe were nice, So, and I grew up with a brother, and he does cover art and illustrations for me. And since he was like 5, he's been drawing monsters, creepy monsters. And I'm 4 years younger than him. So he would, always talk about the scary monsters out behind the barn, when I had to do chores at night. And just scare the bejesus out of me all the time, have great fun with his little sister. So, just incorporating some of that, but I don't want it to be so far that it's true, some of the true horror novels out there. I didn't want to go that far because I want to include that dark humor, and a little bit of romance on the page and some history. So I always have enjoyed mixed genre shows, movies, that was my thing, was like, oh, can we mix a little bit of this into it? It's more fun. And so when I started writing, I wanted to incorporate a lot of that together and see how it felt. It did hurt me in the beginning. I had struggles way back when with publishers at that time because they didn't want mixed genre so much. They wanted you to pick, are you going to be 70% this and 30% this, and then we could put it on this shelf under, a mystery. And I'd say, well, I'm kind of 50-50. And they were like, well, no, thank you then, So it slowed me down a little in the beginning.
How do you find people respond to it? They really like that mix?
Well, I don't read reviews because I think that can mess with your head, my head. Maybe not yours, but for me, I don't want to read reviews. I just want to stay focused on what I'm going to tell in the story. But those who love them, love the books, love the mix. They like the blend. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I love how you include this history bit, or I love how there's still a little bit of romance in there, or, oh, geez, the monsters were so scary I could hardly sleep, but I loved it. So, I guess I'm finding people. Of course, not everybody's going to like it. That's the way it is. Not everybody likes everything. But I'm out there looking for people like me who like that mix. And then, we do the fan party every year in Deadwood, South Dakota, and bring people in from all over and have a good time together. And it's kind of like I'm out there trying to find people like me, friends. It's my way of reaching out and finding people in the world that share a love for this kind of storytelling.
So you're doing a fan party once a year? Or?
Yeah, we've been doing that. We did it for 10 or 11 years. This year we did not, and we put it on pause because, like I said, my mom passed and she lived out there, and I just didn't have it in me to go and, deal with all the emotions that come with returning to where she spent her life and then, meeting people or talking to people and hanging out and tons of hugs. I just knew I'm an emotional person, and I thought I'm just going to cry the whole dang time, and that's no fun. So we paused it for this year, but we'll be back again next year, and I can't remember if it's our 11th or 12th. I think it's our 12th. But anyways, yes. And we do book signings, but we also do like tours together of some of the haunted locations in the area. Get together for meals, go in haunted mines, whatever. We just try to schedule events together and hang out.
Oh, you dress up like different characters?
We did that one year. It was around Halloween, and we said, come as one of the characters from the story, if you want, for the actual, where we actually have the party one night, in one location. And oh, that was a lot of fun. People had such a good time with it.
So who's your favorite character to write in this series?
Well, in the Deadwood Undertaker series, my husband, there's 3 of the characters, many of them, but, the 2 gunslingers, freighters I talked about, and then there's another guy named Hank. He's a little bit older. He just has their voices down so well. And where I get to play is Clementine, and then some of the other characters that are in there. I get to have a little bit more play in there. But we really, in this particular, the Deadwood Undertaker series, we work on blending our voices. So it's not easy to go, oh, that's Anne writing that part, and there's, Sam writing that. We're trying to sing in, chorus together rather than solos.
Wow, that's interesting. How do you get away with that? How does that work? Because if you don't see something the same, or a reaction, or something like that, how do you deal with that?
Well, we argue.
Oh.
But since we're married for a long time and have kids and have remodeled a house together, and we've done a lot together. So we've argued before, so it's not really anything new. I think what often determines who gets to choose which way we go in the story is whoever argues the loudest and is the most passionate about what we're, fighting for. Then the other will tend to go, okay, we'll do it your way. We'll try it and see how it feels. It's not easy. I don't think I would do it this way with anyone else. But because, we have this history together, we're able to make this work and produce stuff. But again, we've done a lot of things together, and most of them have turned out really good. So we have faith that as long as we can keep pushing through any disagreements, the end product will be something wonderful.
Yeah, we're interviewing you, not him, so that shows a level of intelligence. The decision-making pyramid. Yeah, next time you're on a podcast, pal, you can say something. But
then he can tell you he'll tell you how it really is.
We've got him on the other line right now.
Right, he's looked at my address. Hey, can I ask one question? And not to kill a good dead horse or dead wood. Is there any idea in the back of your head saying, I want to write To Kill a Mockingbird 2? I want to take a break from this, although it's really good, I really enjoy it, and do something totally different.
I have had there's some ideas that have crossed my mind that I've thought I would love to explore that. For example, I would like to write a medieval, but with supernatural and some of the fun, some of the characters I've explored in the Deadwood series go back in time to maybe when they were, there in time, or just that era. And I'm, thinking around 1500s, maybe a little earlier, maybe, I don't know. See, it's just a little thing in my mind of that would be fun to go back in time and explore some of these, times and characters in history and include supernatural in there. And how would you deal with that then? What would the fighting be like? All that good stuff. But I know that the research is going to take so much time. You can't screw that up because, again, readers are smart. They will tell you, no, you can't, have that at that point in time. So for now, I just watch those kind of movies, like an old Robin Hood show or something like that, and just try to enjoy it that way. But yes, I would love to explore something along those lines. I don't know. Will I ever get to? Maybe. I don't know. But these long-running series that I do are popular, and people want the next book. So that kind of keeps me, working on the current ones I have.
Well, let's stick with that. You've written a lot of books. You don't read the reviews. How much are your readers looking over your shoulder as you're writing a book?
Well,
Do you think about the reader as you're writing?
They kind of. Yes. I guess yes. Because I would like to keep them right there with me and wanting to keep them alongside this journey with me. However, that doesn't mean I'm not going to throw things in that they go, wait a second, that's not what I was expecting or, what I was hoping. Because I think I have to tell the story that's in my head or I'm not going to have any fun telling it anymore. And once the writer is bored, we know that's, death to a story, basically. I guess they're there, but just thinking that they're there, and how much they'll enjoy this scene or this next thing I write, I'm working on. They're that way.
Got it.
Yeah. Like you're not writing intentionally for them.
No, I'm writing. It's got to make me happy, sad, scared. I mean, I just worked on a scene that had me just, oh, that's creepy. And I even have the picture of what it is that's causing this up on my screen the whole time with scary music in the background playing to add to me being, oh, this is creepy. And I want them to read that and feel like, oh, this is creepy too, and enjoy that chilling feeling. So in that way, they're there with me. But the story has to be mine or it's gonna die. Because if I'm not the one, if it's not coming out of me and I'm not the one putting it on the page and my ideas, I think there's going to be a problem.
Can I ask one thing? Because when Joe asked you about, writing something different and you said history and go back into 1500s or something and then have something and paranormal and stuff, it seems like paranormal is very important to you doesn't matter what you're writing. What does paranormal mean to you?
I guess it's it's the opportunity to have things happen in a story that are exciting in a way that you can't easily explain. And it offers a thrill concept for me. I do have my Jackrabbit Junction series, and that does not have paranormal. That is just adventure and mystery and humor. And I enjoy that too, but we're doing a lot of treasure hunting often, or we found a treasure and we wish we wouldn't have, because now there's going to be some killer coming for it and taking people out violently, So I do have that series where I don't have any paranormal or supernatural, and it's fun to go over into that because it offers challenges in a way, as a writer, that's different from the Deadwood series, because I have to have more logical, realistic explanations for why something is happening. Where in Deadwood, there's creatures that do things that are like, what? How did they do that?
Do you like those movies, the Westerns with Dracula or UFOs in it and stuff like that?
Yeah, what was that one with Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford?
Cowboys versus Aliens.
Yeah. I know a lot of people weren't into that, but man, I thought that was fun. It was different.
Right.
It was just something different. I just watched Tremors last night on the big screen. They had it in town with one of the producers and writers was there to introduce it and do Q&A. And that was really cool. I hadn't seen it on the big screen. And yeah, here's these monsters that they can't really explain. And so, there's just something fun when you mix all that stuff together, I think, in a way that is exciting for me. Did I answer that question? I feel like I got into that Tremors tangent and then I was just...
No, that's good. I think so. Yeah.
It was really neat to see. I don't know if you guys ever saw that on the big screen. I only ever saw it on VHS because that's, in the early 90s, it was out on VHS. And so this was the first, I've seen that thing like 50 plus times, no joke. But this was the first I'd seen in the theater. And I saw stuff because it was all so big that I hadn't noticed before. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, makes a big difference, actually. It's crazy. Well, here we are. Let's talk about how people find you. Website, social media. Where do people go?
I mean, I'm dropping flyers from planes all over the world. I don't know how you couldn't find me by now.
Oh, you're the one doing that.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I know. I always joke I'm like a bad disease that, just keeps spreading and spreading. The easiest place is my website, anncharles.com, and that's ANNCharles.com. And on there you can see all the different social media places where I have a footprint in there, and sometimes that's all there is because it's a lot of work, to go from social media to social media. And then also where you can buy the books. It's all right there on my website. So that's really the best place to start.
Okay. Of course, we'll share all that on ours so people can find you easily and stuff like that. In a series like this, how many are you going to do? Or do you know this? Like, do you know how far this is going to go?
For the Deadwood Mystery Series, I used to say long ago when this started, 12 seems like a good number. And then I hit 12 and boy, we're just rolling. And I do have, an overall series plot line that I'm working along. So there are plot points I'm hitting and aiming for as I go, but I do not know how many books are in between those plot points to get to each one. And that's where the fun is for me. As I explore the world on the page and find out what happens next, it keeps me excited to continue telling the story. And so I am slowly moving along this plot line for the overall series, and I have an ending for it in mind, but it's out there still. And I always say, as long as the readers are still enjoying the stories, then I will keep going, and keep telling this long-winded tale. And it's kind of the same way for the other books in the series, or my other series. We just keep going because the story keeps unfolding in front of you as we go.
Right. Do you have any problem writing male characters, like lead characters?
Initially, it was more of a struggle. I've been a female for a long, long time, even by that point.
When did you change?
Yeah, so's Al.
So, I started, and I think at first I think the males sounded a little female. They had a little, there were just spots of it. And so that was where my husband came in early on in this whole thing. I'd be like, read this, and I need you to tell me where it sounds female, and where I need to tweak it some, and how a guy would think about this. And so early on, there were a lot of times when he'd be, circle this and no, he would write no in the margin, which I always, joke about. No, come on. Give me a little bit more than no. But, in time we would talk about it, and I kept working at these male characters. And I'm not saying I'm Rambo on the page by any means. But I do have him and several other first draft readers who are male for that reason. I want them to go through it and tell me, if any of this stopped you. And I have safeguards like that in place to help me think like a guy.
Right. Yeah. And how violent do the books get?
Sometimes they're pretty violent. There's some gore, but I don't weigh heavy on that. It'll pass by, and it's not easy. It's much easier to do gore on a screen, I think, a film than in a book. But there's some violence with some sharp weapons and things that happen. So it's in there. And, I once was talking to a guy who writes more action thrillers, and we were comparing notes on things. And he was like, well, how's the language with the readers? And I said, I get hit a lot of times by, readers who don't think a woman should write some of these words. And he goes, you're kidding me. And I said, no, I am not. And I said, I've read through some of your book and all the F-bombs, and, I can't do that. And I don't know if that's changed with time, but, that was like 5-6 years ago. I will get called on too much of that. So, it's made it so I kind of come at things a little differently. It's made me work harder in a good way to still be able to incorporate all that I want and still, use the language at times, but also mix it up a little bit. So I try to look at it as it was a growth opportunity for me to try something different.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, it's been a great conversation. We're glad you came on. Again, the book, Hip Feet in Bad Company. That's Ann Charles. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on again. It's always fun talking to you.
Thanks.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.